So I don't like to use the word learning difficulty. I like to use the word learning difference. And so some words I just delete.
Before we start this episode, I feel that I need to say something. I invited Glen McPheat, who is an educator and a special needs specialist, to come and talk to us on the podcast. But even by saying this, I feel that I'm failing him. Glen is a very different educator and somebody who sees special needs as opportunities. Our conversation was very interesting and it was long, and at times it moved to him interviewing me, and you will see how he has a completely different way of looking at things. And this is why I think that parents will love it, and anyone who feels that at any point in their lives they were not like everyone will find something to learn from this episode. Glen is calling himself neurodiverse, and I can find myself in this category as well. For that reason, you will see or hear that many times we are jumping from one thing to the other, and at times Glen is going very deeply into some topics. So if you feel that your attention span is drifting off, be a bit patient, give it 1 or 2 minutes, and we will go back to a part of the conversation in which you will reconnect. In a way, I was thinking, should I take those parts off? Should I just edit them out? But as you already know, if you've been listening to us for a long time, most of our episodes are being broadcasted to you just as we recorded them. I'm going to take the opportunity to invite you to listen to other episodes, maybe shorter ones, and to get to know us, to get to know what the world of coaching has got to offer and how we do that at the International Coaching and Counseling Institute. It will, of course, be lovely if you like the episode or other episodes, if you share them with people who might benefit from it. I think this episode in particular, if you have any friend or know anyone that their children have some kind of special needs, and that can be anything from difficulties at school, behavior difficulties, anything like that, you will get a lot of answers listening to the next hour and 40 minutes, I think, something like that. It was long, okay? It was very long, so feel free to also listen while you're walking, jogging, driving, just like I do. Come on, let's listen to Glen just after the opening music. Say something.
Hello, my name is Glen.
Okay, we are recording.
Great.
You ready for it?
I'm ready.
Welcome to another episode of Moving Forward with the ICCI, where coaching meets real life, the podcast of the International Coaching and Counseling Institute. Today I always say a special guest because you're all very special, but today it is very, very special. I have Glen McPheat here. Hi, Glen.
Hi.
I don't know if you know, I don't think you do know, that you are the first male guest on our podcast.
Great.
Very special. Until now, I only interviewed female guests. Some of the podcast episodes I recorded by myself. So it's very special to me. So thank you very much for coming.
Well, thank you for having
on your
me.
holiday.
Yeah,
let's mention that. So we are both on a very holiday kind of feel. Sandals, shorts.
Yeah.
It's great. Because that's not how I usually meet you. Should we say how we know each other?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we usually meet at school.
Correct. So you work with my husband.
Yeah.
I've heard about you quite a few years ago, the great work you're doing with students at that school. But a few months ago, I was very lucky to meet you in person because of our son who joined that school, the high school. And we realized that he has dyslexia. And this is the reason why my husband and I came to see you as parents, not with the hat of him as a colleague, but he had the hat of a parent on. I joined as well. We had some lovely conversations with you and your colleague. And I was ever so impressed with how you talk about children, about education, about what is special needs, what is it in school, what is it in life. And a few weeks ago, we had another chat over the phone, and I just said to you, I love what you're saying. Would you like to come and be my guest on the podcast?
Yeah.
And you said, yes.
Yeah.
And then you said what it is about. And I said, I call it when coaching meets real life. And you said, I'm in. And this is why you're here. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I'm really looking for this conversation because just your energies and the things you're saying really fascinate me, and I'm sure it will fascinate our audience, especially if they are parents, but not only, because we're going to talk about us, human beings, people, and how does it work for us? And do we always fit in? Are we sometimes more special? How can we go about it?
It's interesting, isn't it, the word special, because my title in a UK school is Special Educational Needs Coordinator.
Yeah, SENCO.
SENCO, yeah, and we often have the D in there as well for disability. And it's kind of like, I would say that actually I'd like to get curious about special, because I think everybody's special.
That's very true. I remember before I was a mother, I listened to a song by a very famous singer, and she's saying that she's singing to a child, and she's singing, you are special, and you are special because of your special eyes and your special nose and your special behavior and your special being. And I thought, that's how I want to raise my children, telling them every day that they are special because of who they are.
Yeah, not for what they do. There's, in my model of the world, there's a sense of how we do something. So, are we showing up? Are we not showing up? But there has to be a sort of an equality in what we do, in that actually we approach everybody as special, and that actually it's more a sense of that courage to show up. And that's our task, really, is to show up. And in that respect, then we approach every person as special.
Correct. Especially, I believe that parents, it's their responsibility to show it to their children.
Yeah. But we tend to have, and it's quite a cultural thing, and especially in schools, we tend to have this approach of, well, if you do it in this way, then I'm going to give you that feedback of love. But if you don't do it in this way, then I'm going to disapprove. But actually,
I think not only in schools, I think, children, it's almost a natural way, unfortunately, to raise children.
Yeah.
If you will eat from your plate, you will get the dessert. Yeah. And I just need to ask you not to bang on the table. Boom, boom, boom.
Sorry.
Yeah. You need to behave here.
Yeah.
Because of the microphones, not because of me.
Understood.
So I really want to talk about that, but maybe I'll ask you first who you are. How did you get to become what we call, again, in the British education system, a SENCO, a Special Education Needs Coordinator? What have you done in your life before? I'm super curious.
Yeah, I've had a fairly zigzaggy path, and I didn't just work in one school. I in fact started off after university studying environmental sciences. I started off as an environmental consultant and worked in industry for 4 or 5 years, project managing, looking particularly around air quality control. And I always felt a drive that I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to feel that I was giving something back, that I think really I've examined my epistemology, and it's all about service. I feel a sense of service and making a difference. And everyone was always saying to me, you should be a teacher, you should be a teacher. And I was saying, no, I don't want to do it. I really don't want to be a teacher. It was the last thing that I wanted to do. I really wanted to, I think, play in a band and sort of do the rock and roll thing. But
you do look like somebody who would play in a band.
Yeah. And eventually I gave in to the calling and went into do my teacher training at PGCE at Chichester in the UK. And I trained as a junior school teacher because I didn't feel like I wanted to just teach science. I didn't feel like I just wanted to teach maths. In fact, I just wanted to be with humans to be a service to humans. So junior school felt like the most useful pathway for that would honour the musician, the historian, the mathematician in me, and just to be around other little humans to make that difference.
Because in primary schools in the UK, the class teacher, the form tutor, is basically teaching almost everything.
Absolutely, and and that included swimming and PE and PSHE and maths and history.
Let's just explain to people who are not coming from the British system. So PE is physical education, so sport.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing you mentioned?
We did swimming. We had to do PSHE, personal social health education.
Yes.
So absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And it was in a day before teachers had time off to plan and prepare. So we were teaching 5 days a week, 5-6 hours a day. You know, it was pretty intense and interesting. But I spent 5 years in junior schools, and I got a sense of feeling fairly trapped and stuck in one class all day, every day, and wanted to think, well, how can I make more of a difference? And actually, I ended up getting a job in Springboard Education, which was a special school in the UK for children who were excluded. And these were children that nobody else could or would work with. They were children who came from incredibly difficult and sad backgrounds. And school had failed them. The adults had failed them. And so I was brought in to be a teacher. And very quickly I was promoted. So after the first year, they asked me to set up a junior school for children who nobody else could or would work with.
Yeah.
And within 6 months, we'd set up a junior school. We had our first 2 students. And I set up an outreach project in a children's home to work with really vulnerable students, often who come from London. 12 or 13 were involved in quite difficult behaviours. It was a secure children's home, and the children tended to like to abscond, so there were often sort of these searches going on for these children. But I'm talking about it now, and I'm feeling an immense sense of sadness of what these children had been through. And we very early on in our design of the school decided not to wear uniforms and not to be called Mr. or Mrs. We were called by our first names.
Yeah.
And I learned that actually in approaching and working with students who had such vulnerabilities, that the more equal that we could meet them, the less superiority that occurred, the more trust we could build. Because these were children. I wouldn't want to go into the stories in a conversation like this, because there are things that you live and learn about in the fields that I've worked in that just you don't really talk about in general conversations. Things that would surprise people. Yeah. Things that change you.
Maybe we can record a separate episode about that, because I don't know if you know that my second teaching job, because I come from teaching background as well, was exactly with children like that.
Ah, okay.
Not children, actually, young adults. They were all 18, between 18 and 21. They fell off the wagon sometimes, did not finish 10 years of education. And in Israel at the time, it's still like that. You had a rule that you had to finish 10 years of education.
Well, there's a special word, wasn't there? NEET. Do you remember that word? Not in education, apprenticeship or training. Yeah.
But they came with exactly that background that I think you're hinting that those children you worked with were. Yeah. A lot of them couldn't read and write, certainly not have, any degree at the end. And what we've done is either in 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, depends on the program. We have taken them through that full education up to 10 years of education, which is like to the age of the equivalent of age of 16. Yeah. And one of the things that I really remember so vividly. The head of that school once told us, we were like the senior teachers, the teachers and senior teachers. He said, you never give up on any of them.
Correct.
Because they will test you. They will tell you you hate me. They will really try to show you that you're not, that they're not worthy of your love. And you stick on, you stick with them. Because, and I remember his explanation, he said in their life, so many people have given up on them. Their parents, teachers, but you don't.
Yeah.
So
that was exactly the ethos we had, and we had a principle of no exclusion, because they'd been excluded multiple times by the time they reached us, and even from the special provision, the out of county provision that had been put into place, they'd been excluded, and so we were the last stop for many of them. And I can remember one young boy who had been in a shed for 3 years every day.
wow.
And so we started his education down in the shed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met him down in the shed.
Yeah.
And he completed with us, got some qualifications.
Yeah.
And, I now know that he's living a good life.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to hear.
At the same time as going to Springboard, we also started fostering. And we went through the process of fostering.
And your...
Like, my partner.
Wow.
Yeah. And we were fast-tracked through, and we worked with an agency that actually supported students who were out of county again. So we had young people in our home and our family who had also struggled with very similar issues.
Wow. What's out of county? What does it mean?
So, you have a state system, which is state education and state-funded foster care.
Yeah.
But often the cases are too complex for that need to be met. So then they go to a private. So out of county essentially means a private agency. That's
so
it.
you were fostering for, first of all, I didn't know that about you, and I'm like fascinated, and I'm applauding you. I won't do it on the podcast because the ears of our listeners will burn, but wow. So how many years have you done that for? We
did that for 10 years. And then, we decided to stop after 10 years because
it's a lot, 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I actually went to work in a boarding school, but that's a whole different chapter. In fact, after working at Springboard, I went into work in a state school in Brighton, 2,400 students, as a special needs teacher. Again, special needs.
Yeah. We are keeping repeating. Yeah. We'll talk about it in a second.
Yeah, we'll dig more into that language. Yeah, I had Springboard. I had a successful career. I'd actually become a head teacher.
Wow.
I was heading up the school, but I felt the more head that I became, the less input I had doing what I liked doing, which was working with people. With the children. And so I decided to, at that point I did my NLP training, and I decided to be doing a 3-part job, which was coaching on the side, NLP, music, I was playing in a band and making money, and then I also worked full-time as a teacher. So I wanted to sort of think about a more holistic career, which kind of enabled me to be doing more what I wanted to be doing. And I was quite young being a head. I was like 30 to 35 and probably didn't have all the resources in place at that point in time that could enable me to do the job. I felt in some ways it hurt too much emotionally being the head. There were decisions that had to be made that I found really difficult to make. And so it was quite nice to take a step back and to look more broadly at my career. And so working in a state school in Brighton with 2,400 students was a really, really good experience. Really enjoyed it. And helped me to see things from a broader perspective. So whilst I was in a special needs department, it was a school, not a special school. And again, that was another 5-year experience there when I went on to work in a boarding school. So in the boarding school, it was about consolidating everything, the music, the other thing that I trained to do when I was 30 was to be a Tai Chi teacher. So alongside the coaching and the music, I was also set up a Tai Chi school, because I found,
Wow.
in my experience and dealing with my past life, the difficulties, I had quite a few sort of acute childhood experiences, ACEs we call them in the trauma-informed learning. Yeah, I found that sort of movement therapy really powerful, and it helped me to really manage my own stresses and anxieties that I had as a human being. And probably as I've grown and later understood that it actually, I'm probably more in the neuro tribe of ADHD. So there are differences around that mean that being able to do things like mindfulness and Tai Chi have really helped me manage my fast brain, my overactive brain.
But listen to what you're saying here, because first of all, you're describing describing yourself and what you've done. And what I hear is a person who can have so many different interests at one time and be very good in managing them all. You know, Tai Chi school, mindfulness, being a teacher, being a head teacher, almost all at the same time.
Yeah.
And yet this is what works for you.
Yes.
And I know so many people who are like you, myself included, who are criticizing themselves for spreading themselves so widely all the time.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that? I know what I have to say about that, but I'm interviewing you here.
Yeah, I think I'd get curious about the and those sort of decisions that we make about, well, I'm not being successful because I'm not fitting a certain pathway or expectation. And I'd get curious about, excuse me, whose expectations they are. And actually, for me, I did have that judgment about myself as well. I noticed that judgment coming up, that actually I didn't stay put in one school and go along that usual pathway of being promoted to being a head. I then moved into another role. And I think, I remember back in my teacher training, we had a great English lecturer, and he said to me, always present a moving target. So I think for me, moving and changing is a really important facet of who I am and what I do. And staying in one place for too long doesn't give me the sense of joy or energy that works well for me. So it's about honouring those parts of ourselves that work well in that way.
Yeah.
And in a tribe, you think about evolution. In a tribe, there are the explorers, there are the people who go off and, work in different ways. And there are the people that stay in the tribe and do the more kind of repetitive kind of jobs. Well, that just doesn't work for me. I'm also, it's interesting in my neuro tribe, in thinking about tribes, I'm the late night person. And no matter what I do about that, no matter what I try, and the books that I read about the 5 a.m. club, I'm not a 5 a.m. person.
Me too.
And think about evolution, in a tribe, we needed people that stay up late.
Yeah.
We need people that get up early. It's interesting, isn't it? Because we're starting to get into this sort of inherent variability, which I think is something we're both interested in.
Very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? That actually, school for me, I'm already disabled because I have to start work at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Which doesn't work for you.
No.
For even your physical being, because you're a night person, you're an owl.
Yeah. And there's very much a push, isn't there, from the sort of the self-improvement sector that, getting up early in the morning is what successful people do. But actually, a lot of successful people don't do that. Margaret Thatcher, I believe, was, she's not my hero, perhaps, but she was a successful person. And I understand that she was very much a night person. So it's kind of seeing the specialness in how we all like to be and work.
So I think this can lead us very nicely to that conversation around what is special, what are needs. Because like you're saying, when I need to be at work at 8 o'clock because I work in a school, it doesn't fit me. I'm already disadvantaged because maybe I went to bed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, but I need to get up in order to be there on time.
Yeah.
And school is one of those places that everyone need to fit in to almost everything, but certainly to like a time regime. We start at that time, we finish at that time. Now you're playing, now you're studying. I'm curious, how do you see it?
When I did my Senko training, we explored this idea of what disability means and very much looked at the progress of the understanding of disability and the words that we used to use around it. Words like handicapped and retarded, which are words that used to be used in legislation. And from how I see it is that we've moved away from a medical model of saying, well, something is wrong with you, to understanding that actually society disables us in a way. And so I always like this idea of Stephen Hawking, who said, on stage, I have no disability. On stage, I'm a Superman. These are my words to describe his kind of thoughts around it. But he said, when I go to the pub afterwards and my wheelchair can't fit up the step to the door and I get to the bar and it's too high, then I have a disability. And thinking about Brighton and Hove, where I come from, the buses did one simple thing, is they lowered the buses down. And what benefits some, what is a need for some benefits all. So the lowering of the buses meant that people in wheelchairs were no longer disabled. But actually, people who didn't like to step up so high benefited from that too. Even people who were a bit careless were no longer tripping up over the barrier or the step. So it's understanding that there's a social understanding of disability as well. And I think in a society that includes people of all shapes and sizes, we have to take care to include everyone. There's an interesting movement about universal design and how we design for our edges rather than for an average person that doesn't really exist.
Take me through that. So you're talking about edges?
Yeah.
On both sides, like more than both, maybe, like the different sides of it.
Yeah.
And you're saying the average person doesn't exist?
I think it was, excuse me, in the late 1940s, early 1950s in the US Air Force, they discovered that there were too many accidents happening. And so what they did was they decided to look at education. You know, how were these Air Force pilots being trained? Very quickly, you know, because the first person that you go to is always the teachers when there's a problem. But very quickly they realised that actually the training was good. They realised that cockpit sizes, when you're making lightning speed decisions, the ergonomics of those cockpits are really, really important. And so they decided to do a multi-faceted study on the different shapes and sizes of the people in these cockpits. You know, if your right hand is 2 centimetres too far away from the accelerator button, then there's going to be a problem. And so they measured 10 component parts of each person. And I can't remember how many people were in the survey. Let's say 50.
Okay.
And measured 50 people, 10 parts. And they took all of these data into account and created the perfect seat for the average person. And how many people actually fitted that seat?
None.
Correct. None. So then they got curious about this German car company. Let's call it BMW. And they went and looked. And they looked at the seat design there, and they realised that the seat design there, they designed the seat in a way which accommodated the smallest person and the largest person.
Really?
So they created a seat that could fit everybody, even the average person that didn't exist. Because what is some people's need benefits everybody. So when we design for the edges and include everyone in that principle, then actually everybody benefits. Everybody can sit in that seat and everybody can be the best that they can be.
You know what you remind me? That when I taught in London the time I was in a primary school, my SENCO at the time, the Special Education Needs Coordinator, once told us, when you have a child, again, I'm going to use that, with special needs in your class, you're lucky. Because the way you teach that child, everybody else will benefit from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What benefits some, benefits all. Yeah.
That is fascinating. Now I want to sit in a BMW car.
I think all car companies have taken on board that now, and they've even got the little bits at the bottom where you can adjust for your lower back.
True.
Benefits everybody.
Correct. You remind me that now our oldest, she's 18, she passed her driving license, and a couple of weeks after I could see that she's moving the seat, and from that day onwards, or more or less that day, we couldn't, both Kevin and I, we couldn't sit on that seat. Like, we couldn't have more than 1 hour drive. Literally, your back is sore. And for months, we've been driving like that, blaming her, until now, last week, when we were on holiday, and our son just happened to move, the headrest, the one just behind your head. He moved it back. I didn't even know it cannot be adjusted. And all of a sudden, both of us had no more back pain. Just to show you how those little adjustments can be so crucial, so important. Yeah. And we literally blamed her for moving the chair, but it was him who played with it, with the headrest in the first place. But I'm telling you that because as a joke, because we couldn't believe it. Like, it's such a comfortable seat, such a comfortable car, and all of a sudden, both of us are suffering, and she was suffering too. That was a funny thing, and we couldn't work it out why it is. And then he pulled it back or something, and it kind of, or pushed it forward, and it went back, and it all of a sudden, no more back pain. Yeah. But it's those, you're saying now, because you are able to do those adjustments with almost every car seat, every car company that respects themselves, give you that option of the height, the firmness of the back, the headrest, etc. So how do we do that in places like school or workplaces? How do we create that multiple functions, I would say, or abilities to fit more people in? Yeah,
that's a big question. Firstly, I want to give credits to Jamie Gorpin, who's working with me as both a mentor and he's done a lot of training. So this is all information and training. Well, not all, because I bring in my own experiences into this. But so the question was around, how do we do that in a school? I think when we're thinking about universal design, it's far easier if we do that at the onset of a project rather than halfway through. And I remember on Jamie's training, he did we had a project to do, and there's a school on a hill, on a mountain, and we had to decide or design between us how we could create a way that all children could get to school. And what you basically do in the exercise is you design this sort of, some people did a lift and some people did a slope, other people did stairs, and you start to realize that actually at the onset of a decision, at the onset of design, that's when we can most and best and most efficiently do this approach of universal design. And so, for example, if you take a GCSE curriculum or syllabus.
Let's again explain. GCSE are the tests that you take at 16 in a British education system.
Yeah, and it's a 2-year course, and it's quite well designed for a lot of students, but it wasn't designed in mind for all students. It was designed for students that were able to access academic work. And so already we're trying as Senkos to work and reverse engineer this universal design in already set up systems that don't really work well for everybody. And you think about sensory overload, somebody that has a sensory overload for example, light. When you've already designed your building, it's really difficult to reverse engineer the lighting. Yeah. We've got quite good at it in terms of thinking about physical disability. So now, for example, I know in the Netherlands, but certainly in the UK, there are grants given to make sure that there is wheelchair access.
Yeah.
So all new buildings have wheelchair access. So we're starting to get this idea of designing for all. But yeah, I think it's a difficult question and it's a difficult job because we're trying to reverse engineer designs that aren't designed for everybody. And therefore, we're seeing, there's a constant battle against these edges that is really, really tough. And it takes money. It takes resources. And yeah, what I'm seeing is parents and young people are now realizing that actually they have a right to be included. And they're seeing that this system, this design isn't designed for them. A lot of academic stuff is designed for this average person that doesn't exist. And then we bolt on this idea called differentiation. But who does that belong to? It belongs to the average child. That curriculum doesn't belong to the child that's got this bolted on idea or something that makes it accessible for them. It's just not taking into account those differences. And we come here to inherent variability because in any cohort or group of people or community, there are going to be differences. You think about, this was another thing that Jamie Galpin talked about, was flowers. And there's a flower called the Kala lily, and it has one petal. Now, we don't say it has a petal deficiency. We look at it in awe and wonder and beauty.
Yeah.
But when we deal with human beings, we tend to call people or label people who have a difference, which falls outside of what we'd say is normal, as having a deficiency or a deficit, and then we medicalize it. And so then somebody has a condition. And think about ADHD. I think as you move from the east to the west coast, the ADHD levels get higher. It's got nothing to do with proximity. It's just got to do with people's understanding or expectations in a school. Gabor Mate is a fantastic author to read on ADHD. He wrote a book called Scattered Minds, and that really helped me with my understanding of it. It's interesting, isn't it? Ritalin, it was named after the pharmacist's wife, who I understand it was a school in Italy that they noticed, it was a boys' school, they noticed that when the boys had colds, they were much calmer. And so they looked at the medicine, the cold medicine that they were given them, and they found that it had this component, this sort of amphetamine-based component, which for people with ADHD seemed to make them calmer. They still don't fully understand how it works.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But yeah, we want a medicine or a pill that's going to solve this. But actually, I believe that it means that we have to reflect on who and what we are as human beings and what we are as a society, and to look at this idea of universal design. What are our edges? And it's moving away from a medical kind of approach to things to a more transdiagnostic approach, where we kind of say, well, what does it mean to be a human being? So the model that I've been particularly passionate about and interested in at the moment works on this idea of uncertainty. And so it's looking at the p-value, I think it's the parapsychological, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it's this value in all needs and differences. We've got OCD, we've got ADHD, we've got autism, we've got depression, all of these different needs. They're networked, they're linked. And difference looks more like a cloud than it does like a distinct list. When you look at these network diagrams, you begin to see that everything's linked. You know, ADHD and anxiety are linked. Autism and anxiety are linked. These network diagrams, we then connect up, and we can see there are certain core links, but then there is one p-value that links everything, and that's uncertainty. So when uncertainty is high, everything else lights up.
So give me an example of a hypothetical student that comes to school and has difficulties, I guess, of certain sort to fit in, or I don't know, to study. And what do you do with them? How do you, what are you trying to do to help them, their parents?
Well, the old school model would say we get a diagnosis. We label them
Assessment.
with a diagnosis. If we can, we medicate. And then the problem's solved. But time and again, and you may have experienced this with Tom, you know, you get this diagnosis of dyslexia, but it doesn't really change anything. And so people can feel quite disappointed after getting a diagnosis that actually nothing's really changed, nothing's different. And we're getting more and more different diagnoses, more and more different names of things. It's kind of estimated by the next 5 years, 25% of children are going to be on the special needs register. And when you've got 25% of children who have a need, you have to start thinking, well, what's going wrong with the system, actually? Think about this social model of disability. Actually, are there differences that we can make in this system? So thinking about a young person that might come into school with a need or a difference, I would want to apply this model of understanding the uncertainties that are going on. And so we split into 3 areas of uncertainty: social, structural, and sensory. So social uncertainty, structural uncertainty, and sensory uncertainty. So
social is very clear to me,
Yeah.
you know, how they interact with their peers, with other children.
Yeah.
How do they interact with their teachers?
Yeah.
What are the other 2?
So structural uncertainty would be the structure of the day, the structure of how things unfold. And so for some people, those changes can cause a high degree of uncertainty, especially for children who are more on the kind of ADHD neurotribe. Those differences mean that they might experience quite a high level of uncertainty when that structure changes.
Or when it changes from, let's say, primary school to secondary school.
Yeah, that's another structural change. So there's a massive amount of social uncertainty in that as well.
Yeah, or when they're older, when they have more like self-study time,
Yeah.
to be able to manage that for themselves.
Yeah. You can think about in a secondary school when a student is experiencing 5 different teachers in a day.
Yeah.
5 different ways to do things, 5 different ways of being in a class. That's a structural uncertainty.
Sure.
And a social uncertainty. And then the other one is a sensory uncertainty. And again, Jamie Galpin and Claire Ward's work talks about sensory cups. And we all have different sensory cups. We have our 5 senses that we're aware of, but we also have the feeling of feelings. So I think it's kind of like the sense of what you're feeling in your body. So with an ADHD person, quite often there can be this feeling of pins and needles or needing to move. There can be the feeling of anxiety, like a clenching in the stomach. There are some great resources in terms of looking at the different emotions and using colours to represent where they are in the body. And I can remember doing one on anger. And for me, that also happened outside of the body. So there can be a sensory feeling of outside of the body. Often with students that have that kind of almost out of body sensation, they need to feel in their body. So weighted blankets and stuff like that can be fantastic.
I heard about that.
That's why we have that. Often children who have that kind of big sense of expansion outside of the body need to be in a corner and in a small space to give them that certainty. That's what they're searching for, is certainty. So that's a sensory experience. And also we have our vestibular system, like balance.
Yeah.
And that you know, with a physical difference like the inner ear and balance, that can cause quite a high level of uncertainty. Because of course, you think little children love to spin around. They're experimenting with what it feels like to be dizzy. And dizziness is, the body will be in a fight and flight kind of situation with dizziness, because dizziness is an indication that you've been poisoned. So, you know, there's this fight or flight reaction to those different vestibular experiences. So what I would get curious then is, okay, so we've acknowledged and we've explored that there are uncertainties. What is the response to uncertainty? How do we get out of uncertainty? And the answer is through agency or through understanding. So if we have agency in a situation, then we can actually agency our way out.
What do you call agencies?
Agency means what is within my personal power. We talked about Viktor Frankl earlier on, actually,
Yes,
didn't we? And, you know, it's that feeling of I have agency over how I choose to respond. So in Viktor Frankl, he had every single freedom taken away from him, but he still, within that uncertainty, found his agency. That agency in that space in between of how I respond, how I choose that I am going to live. That was his agency. And you can see that got him through that massive uncertainty, that agency. In our work that we do as Senkos, we want to include that student in that process, and we very much want to understand what their agencies can look like and include them in that process and their families.
In simple words, what are their skills, strengths? Where are they? What are they good at? What do they like doing? How do they see themselves in that, in their situation?
Yeah, I'll give you a concrete example. We were working with a young person with autism, and their sensory experience is there was sensory overwhelm sitting in a classroom. It was not just visual and auditory, but also this sort of physical response to this feeling of being in a classroom. And the way the agency that they had was they were allowed to chew gum, which, you know, it's a no-gum school.
Sure.
But they were allowed to chew gum because for them, that gave them agency. So when they noticed that feeling coming up, when they were experiencing that sensation, they were allowed to chew gum. And who does it really harm?
True.
So,
you know what it reminded me? You say first, and then I will tell you what it reminds me.
Well, it feels more interesting in what you're going to say, so I'm just going to...
All right. You know our middle daughter. You know her very well. And she has very special needs, again. Or let's put it that way, in the way I like seeing it, and I'm also talking to her about it, that she's very special. To her, I will never say needs. To you, to Kevin, maybe, but and that's how we raise her as well. You're special. You have your own ways. You have your own gifts that other people do not have, and it's true. You know, I remember telling you once that her sense of smell is incredible, to the point that it was embarrassing when she was younger. She would smell everything. She would go around. That was her way to get about in the world. You know, other people use their sense of touch. They are seeing things. She had to smell everything. Now she doesn't, because, again, socially it's less acceptable. But she can recognize illnesses. She can tell how people feel according to how they smell. It's absolutely incredible. And we know that we have, of course now I don't remember the word, but when we are feeling in certain ways, we have different odor to our body, right? Do you know the name? Do you know what I'm talking about? I have a friend who told me, we spoke about it about a month ago and I forgot, but we are producing, like, through our sweat and our body,
pheromones.
That's it. Thank you. So she can sense that.
Yeah.
There are many things that in the modern world, in the modern education, she doesn't fit with.
Yeah.
And I remember telling you once that when we had her assessment, it's quite a few years ago now, because we we wanted to know what's... I never thought about it as what's wrong with my daughter, but what is happening with my daughter and how I can help her. We had many assessments, really many, over at least a couple of years. And one of the psychiatrists who saw us, he saw us for less than 10 minutes, I think. But he asked us questions and he said, there's nothing wrong with this child. She just doesn't fit with the modern world that we live in. If she lived 400 years ago, 500 years ago, in a little village someplace, nobody would have thought, oh, why is she 10 and not reading and writing yet? Why is she, liking animals so much, smelling everything? On the contrary, she would have been the one that at the age of 10 can stroke a horse or cuddle a chicken and tell if that horse, cow, chicken has an illness, because she can't detect it. She really can. And we have a few stories like that she did. And she would have been like that person to celebrate, to bring her when there is something wrong. And nobody would have said, oh, you cannot read. Something is wrong with you. You cannot process this. There's something wrong with you. She would have been that lovely, cuddly person who gives you a really good feeling when you're around them. And people will love her for that, or accept her for that. And when you said that, the reason I remembered that is one of the things that she found very difficult at the time. She still does, but less. Her body would hurt a lot, and she could not sit on a chair. She could not sit on a chair for more than 15, 20 minutes. She would have to fidget. She would have to move. She would go under. She would turn around. And it was a problem in primary school. Can you not sit down? Can you not sit down? Until one of the therapists that we worked with, she said, no, she can't. She really can't. So they brought her a special cushion and a special this and that. Nothing helped. Nothing helped. Until we moved her to a special education needs school here in the Netherlands. That was one of the best decisions we've ever made, because she could stand, she could sit on the floor, she could lie down on the floor as well, and that's how she studied.
Yeah,
there were bean bags in the room. They were so ready to have to teach her in her own way. They were so geared to that. Okay, not 100%, because you can never. You have. I think there were 12 children in the class. But there were so many more things that she could do and enjoy her studies. And all of a sudden, she could read. She could write. Because things didn't hurt.
Yeah. So there was that sensory uncertainty was so high that her not reading was lighting up, until that certainty was sorted, until she had agency to be able to put her body into a space that worked for her. Those, what we might call more complex learnings couldn't happen. But then once she was given the agency to be able to be in that way that she needed to be, then she could learn.
Exactly.
I think also, you hit on a really key point there, and it just is summed up with one phrase, which is difference isn't deficit. And so that's a mantra that I have, is that difference isn't deficit. And also the other mantra is we don't need to assess, we assess for need. So what's important is to look at what does a person need to be able to access the classroom. And I think they're two key phrases that I would work with in my job on a daily basis. It's we don't need to assess, we assess for need, and difference isn't deficit. And it's coming back to this idea of inherent variability, and that, the Carla lily is beautiful. It's different, but it isn't a deficit, it's a difference. So I don't like to use the word learning difficulty, I like to use the word learning difference. And so some words I just delete.
Yeah.
Because it just feels more empowering for that young person that I'm working with, and for me to be able to see it as a difference, not a deficit.
I think we kind of heard what's important in this podcast episode. That's it. So, but how do we do it? So first of all, it's a mantra. We need to remind ourselves that, right? The difference is not a deficit.
Yeah.
But in a school situation, in a work situation where you have rules, you have certain ways of behaving. You know, I don't need to tell you that as a teacher, you ask children to, I don't know, to line up before a class. Okay, that's a very, very British thing, yeah. But you line out on the corridor before you enter the class, and one of the children is turning around. Boom. That could be a cause for, a behavior point. I told you to look forward. I told you we are going to enter this room, and you're turning around. But it's just a child that is, at the moment, has the kinetic need to turn around. Like you're saying, chewing a gum, big deal, So how do we...
I think what we're dealing with are the uncertainties of another human being, the teacher. And when that teacher... When a teacher's experiencing the child that isn't lining up, isn't learning to read, they're also experiencing uncertainty. So a part of my job is to work with a teacher to help them with their uncertainty. So I would approach that with agency and understanding. And so we would produce a student passport, for example, for a young person with learning differences. And on that, there are suggestions for a teacher to do, suggestions for a student to do. And what that does is it gives information and understanding to a teacher. But then also there are agencies within that. And I think also it's moving away from a more kind of punitive approach to a more understanding approach with young people. There's not an easy or quick solution to this, because what we're talking about is an actual cultural or societal phenomenon where we're all on a journey of inclusion. And certainly since the pandemic, the wars that are going on, the financial squeeze that happened as a result of those different aspects, and these are worldwide phenomenon, everybody's uncertainty is higher. And when people feel more uncertainty, they want certainty, and a lot of people are agencing their way out of it in a political way at the moment. We're seeing a polarization of more extreme left and more extreme right. We're seeing more and more issues coming into school with students because parents are more uncertain. So therefore their behaviours at home as parents are more struggled. So we're always looking at the humans within this and what are their uncertainties, and then what's their agency, what's their understanding. And if we can work through those facets, then actually we can all be working in the best possible way. So obviously the other thing for teachers is training. It's not about me going in and doing their job for them. What people always want is more support. And actually, more support isn't always the answer. It's the quickest solution. It's also very expensive, and it disempowers a teacher and it disempowers a student. So just putting a TA into place.
TA is a
teaching assistant. There's good research from Ofsted that says that actually more support doesn't mean better outcomes. The right support means better outcomes, and the right support means looking fully at what those child's needs are. We don't need to assess, we assess for need. And I would look at that need in terms of those uncertainties: sensory uncertainty, structural uncertainty, and social uncertainty.
So take me through that assessment for need. Well, how does it work?
So it might include some...
I'm just going to stop because I think your glass is empty. I'll refill your glass. I'm sorry, it's not whiskey. It's vodka, though. I think vodka means in certain languages water, right?
Water, yeah.
That's
the non-alcoholic vodka. So what might assessment look like? Well, I think I would work from the the presupposition that the map isn't the territory. So quite often we might see red flags in behaviour, but the map isn't the territory. So to understand the territory, we have to do assessment, we have to understand, we have to have more data.
I don't understand. What does it mean the map is the territory?
So it's like when we see behaviour, we just think, well, it's a naughty child. But the map isn't the territory. The map that we've created in our mind isn't the reality of the experience. There's much more going on that we're just not aware of.
Yeah.
But as human beings, we generalize, we distort, and we delete.
Yeah.
To survive, we just go to the most simple, basic program that's in our head. Like when you look at a tree, you don't really see the tree. You go to a model of a tree in your head. To really see the tree, you have to look at all of its facets and all of its parts. And so...
But that's true for everything, because things are because of how we see them.
Yeah. And so we generalize, we distort, we delete. That's how our human minds work. And so therefore the map isn't the territory. You know, when you say tree, you're not really seeing the tree.
No.
You're seeing a
An image
generalized,
of the tree.
distorted or deleted version of the tree in your head. A generalized version usually of a tree. Some people don't know what color their front doors are. It's a bit like with humans, you know, we generalize, distort and delete what a human is. And a human is much more than that, isn't it?
Sure.
That comes from that sort of Cartesian model.
But let's go back to assessment, because actually I'm very curious about it and your opinion. Because there are many people, parents, who are very much against assessment, diagnosis, etc. They are afraid of labeling, etc. From my experience, both as a teacher and as a mother, as parents, we decided to assess when there was a difficulty for two of our children. And I cannot even start to tell you how happy we are that we did that. Because I don't know if that's the map you're talking about, but it gave us answers, and it gave us a different way of looking at our children and being able to support them in the way they needed.
Yeah.
Let's take our son with the dyslexia. Again, a conversation that you and me had before. In the Dutch education he was in, the solution for dyslexia, or what they told him to do, is to keep repeating, writing the same words again and again and again and again. And I remember after you assessed him and you showed us the results, and you said he has like a wire in his brain that's not connected when it comes to spelling. No matter how many times you'll tell him to spell that word 100 times, in the time 101, he will not remember how to spell it. It's his thing. So we need to just go around it, right? And luckily nowadays, there are many ways to go around it. As a teacher, I was relatively a young teacher when I was introduced to special education needs. In the high school in London when I worked, there was a special education needs coordinator. She was a crazy American, but the things she did were amazing. And one of the things that I will never forget is when we had a child that had, I don't like the word difficulties, but found it more difficult to feed or anything like that. When there was a name for what it is, and she was amazing. She would take the group of teachers that are teaching that child after the diagnosis or the assessment, and she would explain to us what it means and how we should approach that child. I remember at least two children that my whole way of looking at them changed. Like you're saying, there were no more naughty children. There were just children who needed me to be approaching them differently. I remember she was very much into talking to us about how they best learn and how we need to accommodate that and what to celebrate with them. I remember one child with Tourette. I never heard of Tourette before. I was 26. So, and she explained how to deal with it, because one of the things that child would do is he would approach you. Like he would talk to you like into your mouth, almost like you felt like he's really was invading your personal space, but it was more like completely. And a lot of people were very, how would you say, like
uncertain.
Very uncertain.
So there might be
uncomfortable
a sensory uncertainty,
yes,
social uncertainty.
Yes,
yeah.
But as a teacher, once I knew that that's his need to come and talk really near me, I no longer went back. I no longer. I understood it. I didn't like it.
Thank you, because what you did was you applied the model, which was, there's uncertainty for me. How do I resolve that? Agency and understanding. So understanding that helped you resolve those uncertainties that you had as a human being.
Absolutely.
And then it no longer has to be a disability. It can just be a difference.
Yeah.
It can be a difference that we celebrate and often, chuckle about together and just celebrate.
So why are people so worried about assessments? If that can actually help, if you know if you do it in the right way, not if you're labeling a child and you're saying, oh, that's it, he's like that, there's nothing we can do about it. A lot of parents are really afraid of labeling, where all I have seen, again, as a teacher and as a mother, that when you know where the need is and you are gapping, I would say, between, like you're saying, the two uncertainties, only good things happen. I have a very good friend that her child was diagnosed with autism about the age of 9 or 10. He was there before. He was the weird child. After, because she was doing a great job as a mother to explain to people what it is, he knew to say, I didn't get it because I have social issues, or I don't get jokes. He used to come to people and say, I don't get it when you are. Why are you laughing now? Can you explain to me? Before that, he was just the weird child.
I think there are two sort of questions to address here. And the first question was about why do some parents fear assessment? And I think, and I might be wrong with this, but I can only talk from what my limited brain understands, is that culturally, there are very different experiences of what it means to have a disability in different countries. And so in some countries, if you have a learning difference, you might be put into a very special school, or even labelled with the word retardation, or you might be hospitalised. And so, of course, there'd be a great fear around putting a young person or a child into that. And that can cause a lot of fear for a lot of parents. I know in the UK, most parents, I would say, are quite keen to get assessment done. They just can't get it because of the funding. So that's because in the UK, and it's not at a great place, but it's at a better place than it was at 20, 30 years ago, is there seems to be an understanding that a disability isn't a bad thing. It isn't a difference, isn't a deficit. That it's less medicalised.
Yeah.
And so I would say that probably people that are scared of a label would be people that have been traumatised by the experience of a more medicalised system. And a more medicalised system doesn't allow for change, doesn't allow for neuroplasticity, doesn't allow for the changes that we make in the structure of our environment, doesn't allow for understanding that difference isn't deficit, that actually, why is it that we always expect an autistic person to fit into our theory of mind, our theory of body? Why don't we ever fit into their theory of mind, their theory of body? The best AEN teachers, the best additional educational needs teachers often are able to be flexible enough to move into somebody else's theory of mind or theory of body.
Yeah.
So that would be my understanding of that question, and it would be useful to perhaps speak to people who are less inclined. I think there are also people who are probably more progressive, who wouldn't want a label, who would see the damage that a label can do, that a label can limit somebody's outcomes and expectations. I'd imagine that people feel like that. I think any assessment that is done should be done with caution. When I did my training in assessment, we learned about test bias. There was a young girl that was assessed with a low IQ at the age of 10 and went through her whole life until 25 thinking that she was stupid. When reassessed at 25, she actually had a high IQ.
Yeah.
The map isn't the territory. An assessment gives us an understanding or an idea of what's going on, but it isn't set in stone and it isn't concrete. A brain is, and a body is organic, it's moving, it's growing, it's responding, it changes.
Absolutely. And I do remember again from this high school that one of the girls said, "Oh, I'm dyslexic, I cannot read." And I said to her, "No, because you are dyslexic, you need to make an effort to try and read." I can, because I was teaching a language, so, and I said to her, "Let's see how, are there other ways that you can learn to read?"
Yeah, absolutely.
Like more kinetic, more games, right? Listening, auditory, and she didn't like it because she had to work more. But I remember talking to her parents in parents' evening, and I said, "She's such an intelligent child. I don't accept it that because she's dyslexic she cannot learn a second language.
Yeah,
she can. She just needs to do it in a different way."
Yeah, I mean there are some limitations in a mainstream setting of that type of thing, and one of the limitations that we talked about were the exams that they do from 14 to 16, and that one of the things that I've done in schools that I've worked in is looked at alternative ways of examining somebody. For example, BTEC can be a really good way to examine in a much more ongoing coursework-based way of learning. So there are different modalities there to explore. And I think about myself and my, one of my superpowers is my energy, my constantly being on the go, my constantly doing things. But it makes it incredibly difficult to sit down and read a book. But thank God for Audible.
Yeah.
YouTube. I can now read in the same way as a neurotypical person. I can be out for a walk and reading. So in the real world of business, I think COVID gave us all a bit of a wake-up call, and actually businesses have responded, understanding that people can access work in very, very different ways. This goes against what Elon Musk was saying the other day in his interview about, people are now taking advantage and working remotely is not something people should be asking for. And I just thought, yeah, you're talking from a place of privilege there. Actually, for so many human beings that I know, they're now working remotely and working in a way that works for them. For some people, that means that from the waist down, they're in their night clothes, but they're in their comfy chair, but they're working a whole lot more effectively. For some people, they're working at the hours. They don't have to get up at stupid o'clock in the morning and do their commute into work and go into work without uncertainty. Or being in the office where you've got the buzzing air condition that's sensory overloading your audible system.
Or people around you, or in open space, that's so modern open space. It's not for everyone.
And CEOs often have a PA who works with them and does that listening and allows them to frees them up to think creatively. We have emails that we can use the computer to read for us. So we have all of these tools available. And COVID really pushed us into that way of thinking and learning. But sadly, schools are the last places that are really addressing this. We still sit people in rows in brightly lit classrooms, in chairs that do not at all look like a human body. We squash these young, vibrant bodies into these places that aren't designed for how they are best going to work and learn. Why? Because changing it takes resources, but also creates a lot of uncertainty. And at the moment, people are moving away from uncertainty and into certain places, so we're more conservative with how we approach an education system. But we need to wake up and make these changes.
And yet, I can certainly see in the school where you're working, there are like corners where children can go and sit.
Yeah.
There are even like, it's like cubicles, you know, that they
Yeah.
can close themselves in and
Yeah.
have a bit of quiet. Maybe not enough, but it's a beginning.
And we just won an award for a sensory room that we set up. So the sensory room is used by all students, but what benefits some benefits the many. So for students who have sensory overwhelm and need that sensory room for that sensory experience, it's wonderful. It calms them down and it gives them a sense of kind of certainty.
Yeah.
So they can feel calm, they can go about their day. This year the project is to set up a nurture room. So a nurture space, which is a classroom space which is designed very, very differently. It looks more like home. So
Wow.
we're gradually coming around and sort of getting these things. Another great initiative at school was the The-ICCI, and it was just exercising. We've got standing desks in classrooms. We've got students who work in different spaces. And yeah,
Amazing.
some really, really good initiatives.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing like in the schools where we grew up, right? The rows, the fluorescent lights.
Yeah. But did we address the assessment question? Do you think that was addressed? Is there anything more that you wanted to talk
I think
about on
I
that?
want to understand more. What does it mean, assessment for needs? Because when do you decide that a child needs to be assessed? And how do you say, okay, what does it mean, assessment for need?
So I think because of where we're at in society at the moment, there are times and places where a label is really useful. And certainly we know that early diagnosis of autism can be really useful, can help start getting in place the more complex out of school support that's needed. Because schools don't have a speech and language therapist, they don't have an OT. So
What's OT?
occupational therapist.
That's right, yeah.
And so
I should have known. I've taken my children to.
So it's recognising that schools, in their current shape and form, they don't have all of the resources needed to help a young person with more complex need, with more complex differences. And so actually a label can be a really good tool to make sure that you get those things in place, and also to help understand what those things that are needed. Because as teachers, we can only understand up to a certain level of what difficulty looks like. For example, a reading issue could be many things.
Sure.
Could be a visual processing issue, could be dyslexia, which is more like a processing issue, phonological processing, or, you know, even just a processing speed issue can cause reading issues. It could be Erlin syndrome, like a visual disturbance.
Yeah.
Could be just they need some different classes. But teachers aren't trained and don't know how to do that. And even in school, you know, I can assess a certain amount of things. I'm not allowed to diagnose, but I can assess a certain amount of things and understand a certain amount of things. But also, I need help as well at times. And it's a bit like having a graduated approach in terms of level of need. And that's what we would work with, is this graduated approach of assess, plan, do, review, and we would look at how it's going in class. And then you might have to reassess and relook at what that need looks like. And you go through these graduated and more complex stages of what assessment looks like and what support looks like. And around about the sort of third or fourth cycle of assessment, then you might be advised to work with an ed-psych, an educational psychologist, or there might need to be an external psychologist assessment done to help us understand how we can better cater for need. And also, at this point in time in society and our understanding of disability and difference, Schools aren't the right shape for everybody.
No.
In an ideal world, school would be suitable for everybody and everyone would be included, but we're not there yet.
No.
And so I have to accept in the different roles and the different schools that I work in that actually there are edges to who we can best help. There are edges. And so sometimes we have to have the really difficult conversation and saying, actually, this isn't the right school. Your son or daughter would be better catered in a more specialist setting where actually they can cater and do the things that we're currently unable to do. And in the UK, that's covered by the law called reasonable adjustment. So we're expected to reasonably adjust, but within that shape of how a school looks at the moment. And we talked about universal design earlier.
Yeah.
Schools have been that shape and that size for a long time. The curricula has been that shape and that size for a long time and wasn't designed with all students in mind. And so we can't reverse engineer everything. I wish we could. It's a frustration of mine, but we can't.
But you know, we had that difficult conversation about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, can't remember exactly, with our middle daughter. And she would no longer be able to cater for in the school she was. And the suggestion was to move her to a school for special education needs. It was the best thing we could have done for her. The conversation was terrible.
At that moment in time, it can feel really hard.
It felt extremely hard. First of all, the assessment, the diagnosis, I don't think I ever told that to anyone, but the day I got the papers and read them, I sat here on the sofa and cried. I thought, what did I create?
Yep. Yeah, there's that parent guilt, isn't there?
Absolutely.
And I, as a teacher, feel that guilt as well. I feel that if we're saying your son or daughter would be better catered for us, well, I feel a tremendous amount of sadness that we haven't been able to change enough to enable that student to have that sense of belonging. It's the worst conversation in the world.
And yet, Glenn, once we understood we have to do it, and luckily there was a school that was better for her, because in the Netherlands they exist, those schools.
Yes.
Within days, weeks, we could have seen the change in her when she was moved to that other school. First of all, how all the staff they are trained differently. They are geared to be, I can't even explain it, more friendly, more open.
It's flexible.
Absolutely. They were amazing.
Yeah.
They really wanted to see how they can best teach her. Okay, they had their limitations, but she got so much more out of the school. And remember, she had to learn Dutch because she was in the British system before. And that was amazing. We all of a sudden saw a different child. Within weeks, she spoke more. She was more alert. She was more herself until today. And every time, because now she's also in a more special school, and you think, oh, I wish she would have been doing like everybody else, but she can't, or she can do certain things. And the school
Can I ask you a question, though?
Sure.
If you could come face to face with the you now, with the you that was sitting on your sofa and crying, what would you say?
It will be okay.
Do you think
you
that
make
you
me
would
cry
have
now?
heard,
Yeah.
it'll all be okay?
Yeah. On that day, I really thought that's the end. No, that's the end. I knew it's going to be fine, but I've let myself cry my guts out. I really sat here and I thought, who have I created? What have I done? We haven't done anything. It's a genetic issue. We couldn't detect it. All the screens in pregnancy that you take, we took more than the average. It's something you cannot know. She has a genetic disorder That is one, I think at the time when they gave us the statistics, she was child 93 in the world with that specific problem. It's not even something that they are looking at because there are so few.
And if you think about human beings and reproduction and genetics, it's just inherent variability. There are going to be these differences.
Yeah.
As humans, there are going to be differences.
Yeah.
And actually, difference isn't
a deficit.
And it's all going to be okay.
And I remember thinking, my worry was, will it be okay? Like, I can tell you now, like you're asking, talk to the woman of 6 years ago, whatever, 6, 7 years, I can't remember when we assessed her, but it was around that, the age of 10, she's now 16 and a half. So around that age, maybe a bit earlier. I knew as a mother that I will do anything within my abilities to help her to have a good life. But on those moments on the sofa, it didn't feel like I'm even able to start. I didn't know what to do.
Well, you were in that state of uncertainty. And then the only way that you can move forward from that is the agency. What are my choices in this? Well, we have the school. We have the agency is assessment as well. What can we understand? And then it's the understanding it. It's actually understanding that, if you think about it, your best learning has probably come through this experience, and your middle daughter has enabled you to be more human.
Definitely.
What a gift. What a gift. And now that's actually rippling out on the other people whose lives you touch. So she's not just on her day-to-day making an impact on everyone that she sees, because I think she's wonderful, and I've met her, and I completely concur with what you said. But she's also changed you. This story today is changing me. I'm understanding more, and that ripples out. It gives me the story gives me more hope, and I feel more inspired to do what I'm doing, because sometimes I just lose faith. Sometimes I just think this is just a fight
against
the system.
Yeah.
But actually, these are stories of hope. These are stories of possibility. These are stories of us just becoming more human. And there's a third pillar as well, actually, because we have agency and we have understanding. And the third pillar is something that I've been learning through mindfulness. And I think in Viktor Frankl's journey as well, his book, he talks about acceptance. And it's kind of like acceptance, and I think that's also forgiveness, isn't it? Because actually, within what you told me, that kind of immediate response is, well, what have I done? Why am I to blame? But actually, it's about acceptance. Actually, I'm here, I'm showing up, and I'm being this human being. I'm doing the best that I can do.
Yeah.
And this is just how life is unfolding at this point in time, and that sometimes, despite all of our agency and all of our understanding, we also just have to accept that there are differences. Some of those differences can cause difficulties in this world, but that's okay.
And when you're talking, I'm also thinking about expectations. You're bringing a child to the world. You're thinking, oh, he or she will be normal. A lot of times I'm thinking, if she was, I don't like the word normal, but let's just use it for the sake of the conversation. If she was like, let's say, her older sister, okay? How much easier it would have been and how, like, the dynamics between them, because they only have 18 months between them.
Yeah.
They could have been like best friends.
Yeah.
They are very good sisters, especially the older one. She's an amazing, older sister. But they could have been really good friends, like going out together, studying together, and they can't. They simply can't. And on the other hand, what happened, and I spoke about it with Alexis Downing, who's one of my former students, that she's supporting caregivers. So there's an episode, I can't remember the number of episodes, but we mentioned that story during the episode because she made me realize that we are all caregivers, whether we didn't want to be, but we are. And what happened to our oldest? And she's saying it. She's talking about it, and she's saying the fact that I have a sister with such special needs made me want to become a doctor.
Yeah.
And she's going to medical school
Yeah.
in exactly a month from today.
Yeah.
Hopefully she will succeed in it, etc. But it changed her.
Yeah.
So it's never fixated. The thing is that you can always look at it from so many different ways.
Absolutely.
We just need to allow ourselves to look.
Yeah. And I think that starts with acceptance.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's, I use that phrase, that presupposition, the map isn't the territory.
Yeah.
At that point when you were sitting in the sofa, you thought the territory looked very different to what it was.
Because it did.
Yeah.
At the time I didn't know there is
Yeah, well,
even
you had a map in your head that was like, well, this is a girl that's got a terrible forecast. This is a girl that's going to have this problem and this problem. But actually, as you've accepted and you sat back into this experience that's unfolding, you've realized that the territory is very different than the map that was originally there.
True.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. And time showed me that there are options,
Yes.
which I didn't think they are even there.
And you're meeting people and having conversations that you never would have had.
Totally.
Your neurotribe, your tribe of people around you.
Yes.
And they're the people that you hold close.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Glen, I have so many more questions to ask you, but I'm looking at the time and we've been speaking for an hour and a half.
Really? It felt
Can
like
you-
10 minutes. I've got so
Maybe
much more
40.
to say. I'm loving this experience.
Because for example, I would like to ask you about, you have introduced me, no, not just you, but when you spoke about it, I thought, yeah, that goes together with so many things I'm hearing lately in the last couple of years about neurodiversity. I think I'll invite you to another episode to talk just about that.
We'll chat some more in whatever shape or form that it takes, because I think in the present tense, where you have this opportunity to let this creativity unfold, it's a two-way learning experience, and the questions that you ask enable me to learn, and the stories that you've told.
Thank you.
I'm walking away from this with a slightly less narrow understanding of life. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for showing
so
up
much.
and inviting me. I really appreciate it.
It still is my pleasure, because I'm still going to ask you 2 more questions.
Okay.
At the end of every episode, we have, I call it 2+1.
Yeah.
I get to ask you 2 surprising questions, and then you can ask me 1, and it doesn't have to be around what we spoke now. But I now also remember that I forgot to ask you in the beginning the question I ask everyone, so that would be my first question. What did you think when you heard about coaching for the first time? What did you think about it? Honest answer.
So the honest answer is I can't remember the first time I heard about coaching. I've trained in martial arts since I was 10.
Wow.
9, 8, 7 judo to start with. And everything that I've learned in coaching was in that. Everything about learning to experience a body, to train, to, learning to play the guitar as well. They're all the same factors that go about, that you can contextualize into, I would say, into coaching. When I first learned about coaching, I'm thinking about, I was probably about 13 or 14, and I saw Dr. First's memory coaching course, and I wanted to learn how to do it. I felt passionate. I felt like I want to know how to get the best out of this brain. I was passionate, and ever since I've read every single book that I could get my hands on. I want to know. I'm curious. I feel passionate about it. That's my honest answer.
That's a good answer.
But yeah, I think the further down the route that I go in, and also training in more classical styles of coaching, yeah, you sort of learn that truth is truth, and if it works, it works, and you'll have seen it time again in your life coming up in the systems that you've learned, from singing to playing the guitar to doing art to cooking to whatever floats your boat. And I think I love being able to sit down with masters of their arts and learning about life from them, because within those arts, I believe, are the answers to life.
But they say that's the best way to do things, to learn, to go to the masters and just look at them and what they're doing. That we don't need to do absolutely everything by ourselves right from the beginning, that there is a lot that we can learn from other people who've been there, done that. So my next question will be, because I know you, and today I got to know you even better, and you're such the things you do, the amount of things you're interested in, it's unbelievable. So what would be the next challenge, the next thing you would like to learn, what board would you like to jump on next, or jump from next?
Honestly, for me, I just want to continue experiencing more and more depth in how I am as a human being and how I love as a human being. So it's just deepening that experience. It might sound quite pretentious. It's not a
not at
it's
all.
not a course or something like that. It's my sitting down and doing my mindfulness every day, and it's just seeing who I am, having the courage to know my good bits and my more challenging bits, and just loving those parts of me more deeply. So if I can learn and be in that experience of being more able to love those parts of me, then I can hopefully give more to the people who are around me. And it's just how can I be of service? So that's...
I was just about to say that, because you spoke about it in the beginning. You really mentioned you being of service to other beings, to the world. How do I make this place a better place? I don't think that's pretentious at all. I think this is very much connecting yourself to who you are and what your call is. Your call is to help others, or to support others, to be here for others.
And I'm not very good at small talk, so when somebody asks me a question, I'd go right to that sort of highest level. So then I have to come back to a practical step in that. And within the next 5 years, I want to actually study counselling. So I've done lots of courses. I've done motivational interviewing. I've done solution-focused therapy, neurolinguistic programming. I've done my mindfulness MCBT course, teaching students mindfulness. And there are all of these lovely facets, but I want to bring them together in a routing of counselling. So person-centered therapy, talk therapy. And so that's my next project.
Go for it. We'll talk about it when the mics will be off. I'll help you with that.
Thank you.
Now your turn to ask me. Quiet in the podcast is never a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I want it to be a good question.
Take your time.
Yeah. And
I'll drink in the meantime.
Have a drink in the meantime, sing a little song, tell some jokes. And whilst I'm talking, then actually the question that's formulating will come up. So, I think if now that your children have grown up, relatively speaking, if you could speak and say one thing to a parent of somebody that had young children and was, they've got this whole journey and all those uncertainties ahead of them, what would be the one thing or the one piece of advice you would give to them?
Oh my God, you couldn't come with a more difficult question. Again, that might sound like stating the obvious, but I think because it's the obvious, I love cliches, because cliches means that it's true, it's works.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think about something that's not totally cliche, and I think I've mentioned it in the earlier. Celebrate who your children are. with them. Every night, I used to whisper in their ears. I still do that sometimes, but it's embarrassing when they are much older. But I do. I'm like you. I'm going to bed at 3:00 in the morning. They've been asleep for a few hours now. I go and tuck them in bed, or at least give them a kiss, and I whisper in their ears. And because many years ago, I read or I heard, I can't remember, it was ages ago, that when you whisper in somebody's ear when they're asleep, it still registers. Yeah, I do tell them about all the wonderful things that they are, that they do, that they can do. I ask them, I say to them, what can... It's a bit hard for me in English because I do it in Hebrew, but I do say to them, what else is possible for you? Beyond any imagination, beyond any boundaries, what will allow you to be the best part, of the best you? And they are different children, so I will concentrate on their strength, and I will say, let's say with our middle one, yeah, she if there's something she loves hearing is that she's kind. So I will say to her, what will allow you to carry on being kind? I would say, celebrate who your children are, and by that, celebrate who you are.
Yeah.
We forget, we criticize ourselves so much.
Yeah.
When we criticize ourselves, they see it, they criticize themselves.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and help them to love themselves as they are. And it's not easy because, again, society comes around and pressure and needs, and and they, especially as teenagers, they compare themselves such a lot. They don't allow themselves being who they are. And you really need to hope that they can. Yeah.
What a wonderful answer. Thank you. Do I get
Thank
a second
you
question?
Come on.
Could you say in Hebrew what you might whisper? Because I want to hear it in your first.
Oh my God.
Your mother tongue.
Yeah, I will say, מה יאפשר לך להיות את? מה יאפשר לך להיות הילדה המדהימה והאיכותית שאת? Yeah.
What a beautiful language.
Well, you can argue. Yeah. It is a beautiful language. Depends,
how it's being used.
Yes, like they say in French, c'est la ton qui fait la musique. Sometimes I'm talking to my mom, to a friend, to my sister. I'm talking on the phone, and I'm talking. And Kevin goes, "Is everything okay?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? It's a great thing we're talking about now." Because it has the and the sometimes it's very, very hard language. Visceral. Yeah, very kind of guttural and very...
That's what I love about English, especially English swear words. They're the best.
Glen, I cannot thank you enough. It was really a wonderful experience.
Thank you.
I'm talking out loud now. Maybe I will split that 1 hour and 45 minutes to two, to part 1 and part 2. And I'm definitely going to invite you again in a couple of months because we have to talk about this neurodiversity. I really have to learn from you more about it. And thank you.
Oh, thank you. And we'll learn together about it because I think, we have to connect together on these things and great minds together are going to make the changes that are needed.
That's true. And we are so connected.
Yeah.
I took a course with Dr. Tamara Tillman, and she's talking about how we are part of nature. And like in nature, trees, fungus, mushrooms, all that it's proven that they are connected, and we are connected as well.
Yes.
So let's celebrate that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To invite you to look at our website, www.the-ICCI.com. We are teaching coaching courses, but also giving you all sorts of workshops, webinars, lots of things that we offer during the year, not just in the courses themselves. But if you feel that coaching is your call and you would like to explore that profession, or just to explore the tools and skills that coaching can offer, look at our website, look under our courses. You will find a lot of information there. There's also a questionnaire that you can take to see if coaching could be your next step. And like I said, a lot of free information. There's a blog. Explore our website, www.the-ICCI.com. We also have a new homepage. We refurbished it, gave it a new look. So have a look. I'm sure you will absolutely love it.